Hello, Business 222 students. Welcome to week 16. This is our last week of course, and we're diving into chapter 23. This week, we're going to be looking at performance management and evaluation systems, kind of how they inform the accounting system. And there are different roles that people play with these management systems, so we're going to dive into that in chapter 23. We're also going to look at flex budgets. And we're going to look at a concept called the balanced scorecard. And some of you may already be familiar with that. And then finally in chapter 23, we're going to look at the link between performance incentives and measures like that for all the stakeholders, and kind of the connection between evaluation and, if you will, reward or incentives tied to those evaluations. Again, all this revolves around kind of the accounting system and how it impacts the finances of the company. So let's dive in. Reminder from last week, week 15, we looked at the ideas of comparability and understandability. You can see the definitions there, the same as they were last week. Budgeting, again, represents the cost to execute the vision of the company. It's the plans of actions with money behind it to have like these funded mandates, if you will, funded visions for the company. That's what a budget represents. And remember, the budget is a process. It's not just the end result. It's a process. But we're adding to some of that now, this performance management evaluation system. It's this set of procedures, these rules that generate financial and non-financial information. And the intent of these rules, these procedures, if you will, is to help a business know how well it's doing against its goals, against its vision. The performance measures are metrics, measurements, if you will, that help a business know how they're doing against a specific goal or an expected outcome. So from my world, I live in the staffing world now. I used to be in manufacturing, and I was in education for a while, and now I'm into staffing. In the staffing world, these are a number of the financial and numerical metrics for staffing, actual revenue to budget. A goal, how are we doing against that on a month-to-month basis? The cost of goods and SG&A, do we have those under control? Actual versus budgeted. Net profit, number of employees employed compared to what we thought we were going to have employed. Like, every week we place about 500 people into jobs. This week, did we have 550? Did we have 300 last week? That sort of thing. Those sorts of measurements. Number of billable hours, that's actually what generates the cash for us. Turnover of employees. More turnover is bad. It's when people turn over, it takes a few days to replace them. That's billable hours gone down. The fill rate, how long it takes for us to fill a particular order to keep our customers satisfied. And then we also look at, the reasons people leave their jobs is actually non-financial. And I'm going to show that one to you here. So a non-financial metric would be, this is data that we collect from our system. We do exit interviews on employees when they leave us, when they leave a particular position that we gave them. And you can see about 14% of the people leave due to family issues. You can also see, medical, people not being treated fairly. They don't think they're being treated fairly, took a different job, need more money, didn't like the work. But the number one reason right now seems to be trending for the last 8 months or so is family issues. And when you do a deeper dive into that, again, these are non-financial metrics that we're looking at, okay, that help drive the business. You see that transportation, the percentages didn't turn out here. This is about 17% of family issues. The reason people leave because of family issues, about 17% of those sub-issues are transportation related. Look at here, sick children, and add on to that parent illnesses. There's a lot of people now taking care of their parents, elder care. And then you can see all these other ones, including, sometimes people are in jail or they had to go to court, so they missed work. But those are examples of non-financial metrics that we use to run our business. And as a part of the performance management system, we look at those, and organizations assign people to look at specific areas of responsibility. And all managers at all levels, sorry about the noise in the background, some construction going on down in our basement, but all managers at all levels are then evaluated in terms of their ability to manage their areas of responsibility. Now, there are different types of centers, is what we call them, in business. They're not departments necessarily, they're actually centers. There's cost centers, discretionary cost centers, revenue centers, profit centers, and investment centers. We're not going to go through each of those in this particular video, but please, in this overview, please read about them. This is an example of an org chart, for, I think it's a restaurant business. And you can see at the top, the president, he's responsible for the investment center. Cost centers, where the food is actually produced for this particular restaurant, is a cost center. A profit center would be like a particular restaurant, where they have responsibility not just for the revenue of the restaurant, but the operation of the restaurant, or the operations where the expense resides, where they make net profit. And then there's other profit centers here as well. There's revenue centers, like this is the sales goal. The sales department, sales division has responsible for revenue centers. They have to make so much revenue. Anyways, that's kind of how it's laid out generally when you look at an org chart and you look at like cost centers, revenue centers, profit centers. The flex budget, pretty powerful too, actually. Oftentimes we think when we set a budget, at the beginning of a fiscal year that it's going to stay that way the entire year. Well, guess what? Life happens. Things change within 12 months. Smart companies are doing this. They're flexing their budget month to month. Not necessarily week to week, but definitely month to month, sometimes quarter to quarter. Flexing up and down. And unlike a static budget, the flex budget provides input from forecasted data that can either adjust up or adjust down a particular line item, either in revenue or in expenses. Let's take a look at the equation. It's pretty simple. Let's say you've got a particular budgeted line item and you want to know what the flex cost is for that line item. Let's say it's a cost of some sort of supply that you're buying. Maybe you budgeted $100,000 for it. Well, now you find out that maybe the cost is going up. The number of units either went up or down, and so you add that to your budgeted fixed cost and you have a new flexible cost. Keep in mind, this can also be a negative number, reducing the cost, not necessarily just adding to the cost. And if it's revenue, maybe it's not a variable cost per unit, it's a variable revenue per unit. Maybe you're adding more revenue to what you previously had. But the primary advantage is it allows businesses to make regular course adjustments to their plans throughout the year. It's based on real-time data. The disadvantage, though, it takes time and it takes a commitment to do that by the organization. The balance scorecard is a framework. It's like I'll show you an example in a minute, but a system, if you will, that links perspective, the organizational stakeholders to the business. So it connects organizational stakeholders to organization's mission and vision, their performance metrics and that sort of thing. So to succeed, an organization has to add value for all groups, all four of those stakeholders, in both short-term and long-term. Stakeholders like the investors, the employees, the internal business process owners, and the customer themselves. This is balance scorecard for, I think it was a restaurant, again, in your text. And just you can see, here's the financial scorecard. It has an objective, it has a performance measure, and it has a target. And then here's the customer perspective, the employer learning and growth perspective, and then the internal business process. And the idea is, if you do all these and you meet these specific targets using these metrics, then you're going to be satisfying your customer. Here's an example of one I found. ECI, I think, is a manufacturing company, and you can see their balance scorecards. It's a little bit different. One of their goals is manufacturing excellence. They look at cycle time, unit cost, and yield. Let's look at this one. This one is a hotel. Again, same idea though, from the customer perspective, internal business perspective, innovation and learning for their employees, and then the financial perspective, a goal and a measure. So get used to the idea of balanced scorecards. In fact, if you don't use one in your organization, you should introduce this concept. Okay, that is it. This is last week, so make sure you dive into chapter 23 and read it, and make sure you finish up all the assignments on time. And remember, God is on his throne. He's always been there, and he's always going to be there for you.